So just take a few moments and listen to me talk a little bit about visceral fat. Why is visceral fat even important? Why even talk about it? Where do you find it? And what do you do about it? Well, let's just start out by saying that fat is not fat is not fat. I think that we've all thought in our lifetime that if you looked at someone obese, or I look at myself in the mirror and I think, oh my gosh, my hips and my legs need to, to shrink down a bit, that we're not always talking about visceral fat. You have your skin, below that is your subcutaneous tissue, and then below that, when you're talking about in your abdomen, is all of your organs. And the subcutaneous tissue is made up of there's fat there, but it's pliable and it's soft. Visceral fat is not pliable, it's not soft, it's firm, it's hard, and it's not healthy. So where do we find visceral fat then? We find visceral fat around our organs, oftentimes lining our organs, and then we'll find it oftentimes around the middle. And men, you're going to find it around the middle, probably more frequently than women, but you do find it fairly often in women that are going through menopause. So maybe a woman in her 50s, 60s, and 70s, you'll begin to see visceral fat around the middle. And you can recognize it because the individual's abdomen is fairly firm feeling. It's not like it's soft and pliable. So why is that so bad? Well, if you think about visceral fat being around that middle area, you're going to start seeing pressure on your diaphragm, and it would put pressure then on the upper organs in the upper chest chamber, your lungs and your heart. And that pressure decreases the opportunity for blood circulation in your body and oxygenation. So cardiovascular disease is oftentimes secondary to someone that has a lot of visceral fat around their abdomen. The other thing with visceral fat is that it does release, it's alive and well in there, and it does release toxins. And those toxins are pushed into the portal artery that goes from the small intestine into the liver. And sometimes that portal artery can even be clogged. But those toxins that enter into your liver can cause you to have increases in your triglycerides, increases in your cholesterol, and ultimately a fatty liver. So all of those issues are of grave concern for someone that carries a lot of weight in the middle. So what do you do about it? Well, the one thing that I read in an article, it was called, it was 2023, a study on diabetic research and clinical practice, is that they talked a lot about that the one thing that they have identified that increases visceral fat is one thing, the biggest culprit, alcohol. So they said that drinking for a woman 2 alcoholic beverages a day will increase visceral fat. In men, 4 beverages a day will increase visceral fat. And so the one thing that they did mention later in the article is that if you don't exceed 1 beverage a day of alcoholic beverages, you will likely not contribute to the visceral fat in your abdomen. So I can only relate to some degree to this article in that now that I am older, and I very seldom ever drank when I was young, so I don't have a whole lot of comparison about how I felt then. But I remember drinking more when I was about 50. And when I drank at 50, it didn't really bother me a whole lot. I could get up the next day and I felt pretty good. But if you drank, as I periodically would drink when I was getting older, and what I find today is that when I drink, I don't recover from it, even if I only drink a couple of drinks. So it does have a distinct effect on your liver, and your liver is your processing center for everything that we put into our body, into our mouth. So that's one thing to really think about, decreasing your alcohol, the biggest culprit. The other thing you can do is fasting, intermittent fasting. And the reason why that's so good for you is that you don't put a lot of demands on your body to produce insulin. So you're going periods of time without eating. So, and there's a lot of different regimens that you can take. And you know, when people usually first start, you start slowly closing your window of time that you eat so that you can adjust your mind and your body to fasting. But fasting is really good for you because you can get into autophagy, which will be a video I'll talk about another time. Your dopamine production goes up, which helps your brain and makes you happy. Your inflammation goes down, diseases usually go down. Growth hormone goes up, which is not what we see when we're real young. We have lots of growth hormone. As we get older, we have very little in production. So the growth hormone going up really, really helps you produce stem cells. And those are those baby cells that you have lots of when you're really young. So that's why visceral fat is so important, that we work on keeping our weight within an appropriate weight so that we're not accumulating fat in the wrong places. Just remember, you can be thinner and still have visceral fat if you drink too much every day. So alcohol is probably the culprit that you really need to work on to keep your beverage content and how much you drink of that every day to a minimum level. Have a good day, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving tomorrow.